When the Civil War ended in 1865, over 4 million newly freed African Americans set out to make the most of their hard-won victory and to improve their lives. Many saw education as a key to making the most of that freedom. In the years following the Civil War, African American communities set up small schools, sometimes with the help of the Freedmen's Bureau, but more often as a community effort. The schools varied from those held in churches and homes to buildings specifically made to be schools. Small, one-room schoolhouses dotted Rutherford County and the surrounding areas well into the 20th century. In 1884, the opportunity to leave those one-room schoolhouses arrived when Bradley Academy emerged as the first school of formal education for the black communities in Murfreesboro. Bradley Academy was a fixture in Rutherford County for several decades before the African American community made it its own. It opened first in a log cabin in 1811 as a private school for the white sons of planters and merchants. James K. Polk, a future president of the United States, was among its alumni. The school was eventually moved to a brick building, where eventually the space was used by nearby Union University for classes and as a hospital during the Civil War. In 1884, Murfreesboro decided to convert the abandoned building into a school for African Americans enrolling, with 150 students under F. G. Carney as principal that first year. The importance that the African American community placed on education is apparent in the early years as the classes grew and grew. By 1895, Bradley Academy's enrollment expanded to 356 students. Just 4 years later, it grew to include the first school of secondary education for African Americans in the area, with junior high classes added to the curriculum. By 1917, the school's attendance had the old building busting at the seams, and so a new building, the building that still stands on Academy Street today in Murfreesboro, was built. A year later, a high school program was organized at Bradley, where it stayed for 10 years before becoming too large even for the new building, and Holloway High School opened nearby. Bradley Academy was the starting place for many in the African American community, and it is remembered fondly by those who attended the school. Many happily recall their day-to-day activities as students at Bradley Academy. The school day began for many students by first getting to school, something that was often a challenge since busing students to Bradley would not occur in its first 80 years of existence. Parents and students were determined to receive an education, however, and so they hitched rides on buses, mail trucks, horses, or carpooled. Many walked long distances to attend school. Once the students arrived, they lined up outside Bradley and would enter the school all at once, class by class, to a drum beat provided by a different student each week. Ernestine Tucker, a student at Bradley in the 1930s, recalls the morning routine.
We used to have to line up outside. All the classes would line up outside, and they would beat the drum. They had a drummer that would stand in the door, and we would march in. Each class had to march in by the beat of the drum.
Once in the building, each teacher would begin their day a little differently. Some, such as Miss Sadie Jones, would start their young classes off with a song that Ernestine Tucker remembers to this day.
I can remember Miss Sadie used to sing, so we had to sing every morning. And I can remember one song. Good morning to you, good morning to you. We're all in our places with sunshine faces. Oh, this is the way to start a new day. I'll never forget that.
Others, like Mrs. Myrtle G. Lord, would check to make sure their students had come properly prepared for class in every way. Gerald Willis who started at Bradley Academy in 1947, remembers how the day began in her first grade class.
My first grade teacher was Myrtle Lloyd, and Myrtle Lloyd was a teacher. She was a very good teacher, very disciplined teacher. But the most thing I remember about Miss Myrtle Lloyd is brushing your teeth. That was a thing with her. And she would ask, in the morning, she would ask everybody who in here didn't brush the teeth, and you had to raise your hand. Well, she had toothbrushes in her drawer, in her desk. So if you raise your hand, you would come up there, and she had a box of baking soda, and she would put a little baking soda in your hand, and you had to brush your teeth. Miss Lloyd, she taught a lot of people in first grade. She was just a good first grade teacher.
Whether they are remembered for singing or slapping the back of your hand for talking in class, all the teachers were dedicated to the education of the children in their care and for providing the children with the knowledge needed to make a better life for themselves. Even with the addition of Holloway High School, the continued growth in attendance once again made Bradley Academy too small to meet the needs of all those seeking an education. So in 1955, a new Bradley Academy was built nearby. Many students recall the move to the new school. Former Bradley students Catherine Knight and Margaret McKinley recall moving to the new Bradley Academy when it opened.
When they built a new school, oh, you're going to love it. You'll have a brand new school. You know, we heard that all year. And then finally we made the move, and we actually walked from one building to the next. We had escorts because we could walk over to Broad and then Broad to Mercury to the new Bradley. And that was a big deal.
It was like the feeling of moving into a new home. Everything was new. There was new floors, new carpet, new chairs, new desks, new water fountains, new bathroom, huge cafeteria. It was really, really nice. Some of the employees who were at the old school were able to transition to the new school, so it wasn't completely different of a foreign experience. It's a better experience. You can't miss what you don't have. So when we moved, we found out what we'd been missing, and that made it all the better. And our principal, Mr. Roberts, and she just insisted that we keep the school the same way it was when we moved in, and we did.
After the students outgrew the 1917 Bradley Academy building, it was left empty for a number of years. At times, the county used it for storage or for a school bus maintenance area. But it eventually faded from the memory of the county and was left to fall apart. In the 1990s, Fred Beneby stumbled across the old school and began asking questions. Those questions led the county to turn the building over to Willie McGowan and Myrtle G. Lloyd, who, with the community, lovingly restored the old school through a lot of money, blood, sweat, and tears. Bradley Academy Museum and Cultural Center opened 10 years later. Since then, it has not only reestablished itself as a center of the community, but preserves and protects the history of the African American community with great pride. As it was in the days when it served as a school, Bradley Academy is a place where memories old and new are celebrated.